Hello, everybody. This is Kyle with attackofthefanboy.com. I am here with Will, and this is XCOM 2. Again, we are taking a second look at the game. Will, you got to do a hands-on session. It was kind of a short rundown of the game, right?
Yeah, it was kind of like the first time that they let press put their hands on this thing, I think. And yeah, it was a quick 2-hour session. But
Gotcha.
you've had a little bit more time with it, right?
Yeah, I've had it for actually a few days. So I got to dive in. But if you watched our last video, you know that I am not an XCOM player. I have always wanted to play the game. I actually own the game, but I never actually sat down and played it. So this was my first introduction to XCOM ever. And it was pretty interesting. I do like the game. I actually really, really like the game. A lot of the praise that I've heard from other people definitely makes a lot of sense. And even though I know that this is pretty different, which you see in the video, I'm going over the ship. We'll dive into that a lot more later. But these are just different rooms on your ship that you use to kind of perform your operations against the aliens who have essentially taken over the Earth. That's not really a spoiler. It's in the trailers. Um, but yeah, I really like the game, but as you will see in the mission that is coming up, it can frustrate the hell out of me. I'm not good at the game.
Yeah, XCOM has generally been a game that requires a lot of patience in moving your squad forward and in baby steps instead of big chunks. The faster you try to take it, the harder it gets. But even in my short time with this one seemed a little bit more difficult. Seemed like it has some more rules and different systems to it than the original.
Yeah, and I mean I can't speak to how different it is, but there are a lot of systems here. Like I'm just jumping in really quick to these like research stations. You have multiple research stations, so you're looking at different. You really only have one research station, but you have an engineering and all that sort of stuff. So you're managing 4 or 5 different tracks at a time, where you're researching technology, then you're using the results of that to build other things. Like you saw, the mind shield was something brand new that I had gotten at the time of recording, and that just prevents the psychic abilities of the aliens from taking over your guys. So I really needed that because those guys were driving me insane. Um, but yeah, you just equip all of your items to your crew. There's different stuff. You got medikits and mine shields and different types of grenades that you develop through those systems. But then there's also more rooms. You have to clear out rooms in your ship, and then you build other stuff like a power relay. I had to build one of those. But we're diving into the mission here. This is I think it was a retaliation mission. The aliens are actually attacking one of the resistance's bases, and is trying to kill everybody there. So I have to go in and rescue them. But I got to choose between, I think there were like 3 of them there. Or no, that's later. Ignore that. But yeah, so we're going in this. We go in not concealed, which if you check out our other video, you'll see more about concealment. Essentially, like you said, I learned what you were talking about, which was that you start the mission and they don't know you're there.
Right, and it's kind of hard to explain because that's a new feature for XCOM 2, the concealment thing, which allows you to kind of move and get into position and take advantageous shots or attacks on enemies, and that's a new system. But why don't you start off in concealment? Is it because of the mission type?
Yeah. This mission type is the aliens are already attacking this place, so
Okay.
it's not like a stronghold of theirs that we're infiltrating. It's that we're running defense against them.
Oh,
Um,
gotcha.
yeah, but concealment really is fun. It's one of those things that's frustrating when it doesn't play out your way, but when it does, it's so satisfying. Where you get your guys' position, so you have like 2 guys off in the distance. You get all of your guys around them. They don't know you're there. You put everyone in Overwatch, which is where they'll attack any active enemy, and then have one guy fire at them, and then all of a sudden, as they're running for cover, all of your guys fire.
Right, those are new. That reaction stuff is new. So yeah, yeah, that stuff is. I thought it was really well done, but oh, man, it's making me jealous that I didn't do this preview now.
Yeah, I figured
because
you would.
I only got to play a couple hours. But no, since you haven't played this game, I wanted to get a good perspective on somebody else that's new to the franchise, and I believe that this is one of the best strategy games out there. I think it's probably going to be one of the best strategy games of 2016, and you've been wanting to play it. This is a good place to jump in.
Yeah.
So you've walked away kind of impressed so far, but let's get back to the mission at hand.
Yep. So yeah, I've got a couple of my better soldiers here. So I've got some snipers, and I don't think I have any of my rangers because as you play the missions and as you train your soldiers, they level up. So some of my better guys are here. They spoiler alert, might not make it to the end of the mission. As I freely admit, I'm not good at the game so far. I'm getting there. I like you said, you have to be very patient. Even in missions like this, where it's just you have to get in and you have to rescue at least 6 humans, and the aliens are going around killing all of the humans. So there is kind of a clock. Most of the missions have a clock ticking down, whether it's that you have to destroy something in so many turns or whatever. So that spurs me on. I'm trying to get that mission finished, but at the same time, if I rush in, they just surround me and take my guys out.
Right. It's a double-sided strategy where you're rushing against the clock and trying to move, slowly and steadily into position to take them out. Yeah, a lot of these missions are similar to stuff that they had in the original game, where you would have to move. They had rescue missions like these, and they're tough. All these missions are tough because you have to balance, like you said, being able to get into position without kind of putting yourself in harm's way and rescuing people at the same time. It's real satisfying when it comes to the strategy for it.
Yeah, and what's definitely been interesting for me just coming into this new is when your characters aren't super leveled up, they're essentially as powerful as the enemies that you're facing. So you can't just run and gun. You can't run into a crowd or even get close to one guy because that one enemy can take your rookies out in a turn. So in one turn, your entire mission can turn on its head. And I had that happen a couple of times, where I just get in the wrong position, or some enemies are off screen that I don't see, and all of a sudden they're on top of my guys.
Yeah, that's definitely something that happens a lot in XCOM. If you take too many moves forward, or if you go a little bit too forward with one guy, you get them hung out to dry. And in this case, it looks like they're right on top of you. But
yeah, that's okay. I think I'm about to take them out. Yeah.
but another thing, I don't know if it's like that in for the progression for this game. But if your guys are wounded, they have to rest, right? I mean, like, if you bring them back to the base after maybe they return with 1 health, they have to sit out for days, right? It still works like that, or do you? Okay.
Yeah, and that was a big problem for me. So even if they get injured in really any way, it actually affects their mental health, and they're kind of just put on the bench for a while. They have to recover, either physically or mentally, so they can be just, I think it was called shaken, was one of the statuses, and that happened to me a lot just because I wasn't used to that. So I was kind of okay with guys getting hurt as long as I could get them back. And then I would get them back, and they're like, "We don't have 4 people to send on the next mission. We need to go and recruit some people, or we don't have a full team." So that happened a couple of times too.
Yeah, and a lot of the stuff that they've kind of built into it, at least to my understanding, comes back down to all that character customization, being able to spend your resources on training characters quickly, the types of characters that you want. If you want more snipers, you can do that. Like in the old game, you couldn't. So I know I would love to dig deeper into that, and I can't wait to dig deeper into it when this game comes out. But I think they've kind of made some of that stuff easier to offset the difficulty, which I think we both pretty much agree. This game's got a lot of layers.
Yes.
When it comes to difficulty.
Yeah, and actually one class that I don't think you saw that they revealed to us before I got my hands on the game is the Psi operative. Did they talk to you about him at all?
No.
So the humans can actually use the psychic abilities that the aliens use against them.
Really?
Yeah, so you can actually mind control enemies now.
Cool.
You can negate all of those. Oh man, the where they get them panicked, and when they mind control them, that drives me up the wall. It's killed many of my guys. So I really need to get. I just got started with Psi operatives. I don't have any in this video, but you train those guys the same way you would any other group, but they take a lot more resources. But you get them out onto the field, and they can really swing the battle.
Yeah, that sounds cool. Yeah, they didn't show that character. Is that the 5th type?
That is the 5th type. Yep. And I think that's it. I think there's just the 4 that we covered before. I can't remember their names off the top of my head, but they're kind of standard, close range, long range.
Well, those guys are a little bit
Grenadier.
different. Yeah, they're a little bit different than what they had before. They've definitely shaken up the classes quite a bit. Because they used to be just kind of straightforward sniper, support, assault, heavy. And now they've got like a guy with a sword, and they've got long range, short range guys, heavy support. And obviously, what they have the Grenadier, and then they have the Psyops. Yeah, I mean, this is a totally different game.
Yeah, I mean, just the changes in the story alone, shifting it to where you're kind of this guerrilla unit seems to be one of the major changes. But then that trickled down to everything else, and yeah, they've done a ton of work on this. I don't know exactly what's different, but it's definitely got a lot of systems and a lot of stuff to keep track of.
Now, for strategy games in general, you play a lot of them? No?
Yeah.
Yes?
Yeah, decent amount. For like turn-based, I've played a lot of Fire Emblem. I played Codename Steam. A lot of mobile, actually. Advance Wars. Civ. I guess that's somewhat similar, but not really. Yeah, I dip into the strategy. It's not something I avoid. It's just, oh my god, the guys that run up and shock you drive me insane.
Yeah, there's also a lot of different new enemy types in this, from what I'm seeing and from what I saw when I went to the preview event. That there's it's just going to be a lot for. It's just not one of those sequels where they just kind of redid the same thing. They've changed so much of this game that it's going to be a new challenge for players, and I like that. I'm looking forward to it.
Yeah, from what they were saying, they essentially touched up every single enemy type. I don't think, aside from maybe the standard grunt, I don't think anything didn't get modified in some way. And then there's a lot of big changes, kind of like the PSYOP soldiers for the humans, but on the other side. God, the things that drive me the most crazy are the random numbers, the die rolls.
Yeah, that's a big part of these games, like that. They make it like that intentionally. It's not something like they're not shying away from the fact that when you get pissed that you missed a guy and it seemed like you should have hit him. They did that on purpose. It's to make the game more difficult. Obviously, it's to frustrate players. I mean, this is literally what the developers told me when I was sitting there. We know, yeah, like we know our players love that element of love that element of the game. I'm like, what are you talking about? Every single time I play this game, I want to like crush my mouse in my hand.
I actually had, so somewhere in this mission, I had a 94% chance of hitting someone, and I missed.
Yeah.
And I got so mad. My wife was walking by, and she was like, "What are you playing?" I was like, "XCOM." She's like, "Are you enjoying it?" I was like,
"What the hell was that thing?" Yeah, I mean that's the thing is like, it can definitely get frustrating. That was a new enemy type, a transformation of some sort. I've never seen that before.
The Faceless.
Faceless.
So Essentially, there are hidden aliens among the humans. They're shapeshifters,
Oh,
called the Faceless. Um, so that actually, so you'll go to rescue a human in one of these missions, and they will be one of those. So they will wake up and change and punch you, and then you die. From my
ugh,
experience, at least,
yeah.
that's happened a couple of times. And there's really, as far as I can tell, there's no way to tell which of them they are. So you kind of have to be cautious the whole time, and you can't just like get a guy out and rescue people and stay in the shadows. He needs backup in case
Right,
one
you
of
got to
these
have
guys
somebody
changes.
covering him. Yeah, that's pretty crazy. Yeah, they used to do a thing where they would turn into zombies. They would be infected and turn into zombies, and then it would be like a mission where you have 10 or 15 people that you need to save on the map, and then all of a sudden it would be like, well, there's 6 of them remaining, and 5 of them are zombies, so you're fighting zombies and trying to continue while there's an enemy going around the map changing them into zombies.
Yeah.
So, yeah, I
The
mean,
yeah, the sectoids, I think are their name. Um, who they can bring the dead back, and then they'll walk around and try and kill you, and you can kill that enemy again, um, but it's just kind of wasting ammo and everything. You need to get the sectoid down so that they die as well at the same time. They're the same ones that mind control you, so
yeah, that and
those
I
guys
found that.
I take out first.
Yeah, I was playing just in the tutorial, and those were kind of like the easy enemies from the original XCOM, and now with that extra layer of, oh well, if you don't kill these guys, they can just revive the dead, and it's like, well, okay, that changes things up a lot. It makes even the easiest guys, very, very
Yeah,
dangerous.
yeah, definitely.
I just remembered playing it the first time. I was like, okay, yeah, this is totally different.
I mean, they don't stack the deck for the player like
Not at
most
all.
games do. Like
No.
if you come across a group of enemies in almost any other game like this, I feel if you discover some enemies, that means you have the drop on them, and so you finish your turn out or you get an extra turn. In this, they move immediately, and then they usually get a turn. They get their normal turn in whatever order things are. So I've had a couple of times where I stumble across an enemy, and then they get to run to cover, and then they get to shoot the guy that discovered them, and I'm like, wow, like,
Yeah.
and that's a good thing. Like that's
That's
not
not
a
fair.
complaint at all. It's
Yeah,
just
no, I hear you.
you need to be strategic about this. They are not going to baby you. Um, it's going to get frustrating, but when you actually do pull it off, it works great.
Oh yeah, and that's what makes it work, is that feeling at the end of it where you're like, yeah, I brought everybody through this, got everybody through this, didn't take any penalties, got my rewards, and have finished the level.
Yeah.
And it can be heartbreaking if you don't. Especially, like, I don't know if this game's gonna have those Iron Man modes where you can't roll back to your old saves. Um,
That's a good question. I'll actually check that out
yeah,
whenever
I
we're
don't.
done.
I don't care. Iron Man mode is very frustrating.
Yeah, no. I'm playing on normal. I was very close to dropping it to easy, and I was like, no, I'm gonna tough it out. I'm gonna learn this game. I'm gonna figure it out, and I'm doing better. But yeah, if you lose one of those, I had guys go through multiple missions, get multiple promotions, and then just some dumb random thing happens, and they're gone.
Now let me
And
ask you this about that. You said that this was a nice portion of the game itself, right? You said that's what you said, right?
yeah,
Okay, so I'm under the impression that this game is more story oriented than the original. Did you find like any story missions in there? Because the original
yep.
game didn't have that many story missions.
There are story missions in here, definitely.
Was really light on like cutscenes and like the evolution of like what you were trying to do. It was pretty simple. You were, the Force clearing out the aliens from Earth, and that was it. There were some cutscenes where you spoke with the Council. There were some story like there were a couple missions here and there, but this, would you think this is story oriented?
Yeah, yeah. There, I actually had to cut in this video around a couple of cutscenes,
Okay.
just because they were spoilery and didn't want to spoil anything for anybody. But yeah, there's been multiple cutscenes. There's definitely a story here. I don't know, you know, how in depth it gets, but from what I've been seeing so far, there's a definite story, and it's trying to have a full blown plot.
So there's a narrative around this.
Yep. And
Oh
that
man.
that actually translates into the mission. Something that I can talk about is like skulljacking, and you can attack enemies with this device that kind of messes with their head, and that plays into the story. So the story actually does go into the missions. You get different, not just kind of because these are procedurally generated maps most of the time. The objectives are kind of randomized, and it's stuff like save people or destroy this or protect this. But there also are story missions where it's like you need to find this type of enemy and do certain things.
And what, you can't talk about that due to embargo?
Exactly.
Okay. And that right there was another that loot recovery mechanic is something completely new that they've added, and we didn't get to see any of that. Can you tell me about how often that happened? The loot
Yep.
dropping
Yeah.
for enemies. Was it just from like that looked like a bigger special type of enemy? Is it just like once in a while? Some enemies have it, some enemies don't.
It's not extremely often. It does not happen every mission, but probably on average every other mission you get one. And it does seem to be weighted more towards higher level enemies. I can't really say. I don't remember like a grunt, just a random grunt dropping anything, but just the one step above them have. So, yeah, I think most enemies are able to drop. It's just kind of one of those die roll things.
Yeah.
And so, yeah, it's just kind of equipment that you use to modify your weapons or build other items like that. Like med kits require certain items, and different types of grenades require certain items. So,
And
it'll
those
just
you
drop.
would take back to like the foundry in your ship and then apply it. You need to have that for like upgrades, or you would need to have that for different. I know because there's different weapon variants, which is something that's completely new for this as well. It just depended on the loot drop basically, or is it
Yeah.
like a material?
Yeah, they're like material. They're different materials, and then different upgrades or different items will require different materials, and different research things will require different materials. You'll need like 10, I think they were called like Ethereum cores to do a certain kind of research that then unlocks an ability for your soldiers. And so, yeah, the loot drops, and then you have a couple of turns to get it. It will actually go away if you don't get to it immediately.
Oh, okay.
So I think it's like 3 or 4 turns. It might be a little bit random, but you just have to stand there. It doesn't take an action, but you need to stop in the square that's highlighted.
Yeah,
And
it's
then
kind of like a door or something where you just walk up to it, click on it.
Yeah, you don't even have to
Essentially.
click on it. If you end a action, a movement action in there, then you pick it up.
Yeah, I mean that adds a lot to just playing any normal mission. The potential to get those drops, because basically the old game just rewarded you with engineers, scientists, or currency for completing the mission. But if you fail the mission, do you remember if you get to keep that stuff or?
I think the guy that picks it up needs to evac at the end.
Okay.
I can't be 100% sure of that because I wasn't exactly following that path, but
Right.
I'm pretty sure whoever picks it up has to make it to the end.
I'm getting excited to play this.
This
Oh man.
definitely seems right up your alley, and just anyone that really is into turn-based strategy. Like you said, it seems like it's really going to be a great turn-based strategy game.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
So I mean, the other element, outside of missions is this everything on the ship, which we kind of went over just really quickly about researching stuff and building stuff, but um, there's really a lot to it where you're building different rooms. Like this is a new comms room because in order to get to the next story mission, I have to get to Africa. And to get to Africa, you start in eastern US and you have to make contact with different resistance groups around the world. And that's how you unlock the map. So I had already tapped out all of my communication, so I couldn't make contact with the Mexican faction or the South American faction, which then would lead me to Africa. So I had to build this room, and then I could start making more contacts.
That's different.
Yeah, and you move the ship around and do a lot of different stuff on the map. It's kind of like its own sort of game outside of the game.
Right. And it's always kind of been like that, where you've got the management aspect of it and you've got the real-time or the turn-based strategy management aspect of it.
Yeah, and we went over this in our original video, but you have that constant threat of the Avatar project, which is whatever the aliens are working on. You don't really know, and you watch as they complete steps, and you're trying to kind of stop those. So
and this is kind of we didn't get to see any of that. Okay, so that's that in the top of the screen right now. Yep. They're progressing towards that, and you don't know what that is.
Right. Not at the beginning.
Have you gotten to the point where you do know what that is?
I cannot speak about that.
Oh, that's embargoed. Okay. Yeah. All right.
But they're constantly working on something. They also will directly attack you. Like that last mission was them kind of retaliating against us. But on top of that, they have their own mission that they are working on, and you need to do your guerrilla warfare to stop them.
I gotcha. Have you gotten to the point where you've got to a fail state?
Not in the entire game, no.
Okay.
I've failed individual missions, though, that definitely hurt me.
Okay. Yeah, I mean, that's from what they told me, that, once they get to the end, that it's over, or it makes it really hard for you to win.
Yeah, it's kind of like I almost feel like it's roguelike.
Yeah. Definitely.
Where you're meant to really replay this. You improve your skills and come at this from a different angle, and you're really working towards something, and if it doesn't work out, it doesn't work out. You got to start over.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, that has always been the thing with XCOM is that if you can make it all the way through, it feels really rewarding, because there's a very real possibility that you can lose.
Yeah.
After putting like 30 hours into it, which is insane.
Yeah, you are always working against the clock. Everything that you do in this mode where you're moving the ship around takes time. So you'll be warned when you have something that you need to complete, like right now. And if you don't, something bad will happen. And then when those aren't happening, you can move around, and you can scan stuff, and that'll unlock different things like a black market, and you can get new recruits and get supplies that you use to recruit and buy other stuff. But yeah, you're always working against the clock.
God, there's so much stuff on here. Yeah, I'm not surprised that it was hard for me to wrap my head around what they were doing here, because we didn't get to see all this Overworld stuff. There's a lot going on here that is very different than the original.
Yeah. And I mean, this all also plays into like I said, I had guys out of commission. They've been injured. They needed time to rest. So I could go recruit new soldiers. And I had a couple of times where it would pop up and say, you have an opportunity to recruit new soldiers. So I'd do that. If I couldn't do that, or if I didn't want to spend the supplies to recruit, you can always grab like cheapy rookies. But if I didn't want to spend that supplies, I could just do some of these. Go around the map. You spend 7 days scanning something, that gives your guys 7 days to recuperate.
Right. But while you're scanning, will it still pop up like this is an emergency mission that you have to take on?
Yeah. Okay. You get pop-ups all the time. So it'll pop up If you're doing like 7 days of scanning, you're going to get a pop up because your whatever you were building is done. Whatever you were researching is done. So you then have to start building something else. You need to start researching something else. You're always managing
Right.
something. Even if I would try and relax every once in a while, I'm like, all right, I'm just gonna do some scanning. I'm a little worn out from all the strategy. And as I'm scanning, it's like, boop, you need to do this. Boop, you need to do this. So
And
you're always messing with something.
and moving around the map, does it cost you some sort of fuel, or is there
No
some?
fuel, just but it does cost you time.
It's just time based.
Yeah.
Okay. All right. Man, oh my god, I cannot wait. This has so many more layers than the original game. As far as this overworld stuff, as far as the ship and the rooms and features of that, and the actual combat itself. This just seems like everything more that you wanted from the original game, or at least that I wanted. It just has that depth. And all they did was
There's
explain it. It was like, oh, this sounds awesome, but this looks great.
Yeah, there's a lot. Just and I will say, especially coming into it without being too familiar at all familiar with the series, there is a wall of learning right
Of
at the beginning.
course.
They do a decent job. They do actually a very, very good job of introducing you, but there's still just so many systems here. So it'll take people some time, but once you start getting, as soon as things start clicking, it's really nice. It's that perfect strategic feeling that you get from games like this.
Mm. Yeah, they're some of the best in the business that do it. When is this coming out?
February 5th. It's very soon, and it's a day after my birthday. Little gift.
So
for me,
you're
you
on
guys.
board?
I'm on board. Yeah, I'm definitely on board. I actually want to, if I can break away from this a little bit, I'll probably try and play the first one some before this comes.
Yeah,
fully
man.
releases.
It is. XCOM Unknown and XCOM Enemy Within are good games. But this one just feels like, when you play the first one after you play the sequel, and you're like, oh yeah, this is not as good because it doesn't have as much to it. It's like
Yeah,
the original is just going to feel more like the building blocks that made up two, and that's kind of how I felt. But well,
yep. But it made me a fan, and I think people that were already fans are going to be super excited because they didn't dumb it down. They didn't tone down the difficulty. It's all right there, and it's great.
all right. I'm glad that you enjoyed it. I kind of thought you would. If you even like strategy games in the least, XCOM has been a good one, and I kind of had a good feeling coming out of that preview event. And it's nice to see that my feelings have been confirmed.
Yep, definitely. It's made a fan out of me, so guess
Cool.
that's a good endorsement.
Yeah. Well, you're going to be reviewing it, Kyle.
Yep, I look forward to it.
Or I can. I have no problem doing it. I just think I might be a little biased.
I am too now, apparently.
Mm.
Although it'll probably take me an extra like 15 hours to beat it, just because I'll be dying so often. But either way, it'll be fun.
Indeed.
So for Attack of the Fanboy, this is Kyle and Will. Thanks for joining us.